Hello and welcome to the Powder Blue Report. This week we're back with our 53-man roster prediction with Ash and myself. Ash, mate, bring you in nice and early. How's everything going?
Yep, good. Not too happy about this JC Jackson news, but
Yeah.
it's one of them. It's one of them weird ones. But other than that, mate, it's not too bad. Not too bad.
Yeah.
I saw it.
Looking forward to getting our roster predictions on there. Obviously, season's just around the corner. Obviously, just the one pre-season game left to go. But yeah, like I say, let's touch on that news as we just kind of heard in the past couple, like 24 hours or so, as we're recording on a Wednesday evening. JC Jackson obviously having this little ankle scope that's put him out for 2 to 4 weeks. It's a bit inconvenient timing, isn't it, with the season less than 4 weeks away?
Yeah.
I think we're both a bit annoyed about this one, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty key. Obviously, JC is probably one of the most key acquisitions of the summer. So, like, and we've been building this D up as like something really special, and obviously he's a massively key cog of it. So it's really unfortunate timing. What I can say is if you look back over the last 4, 5, 6 pre-seasons for Chargers, this is a minor thing compared to what we've normally had to deal with, where we've had massive injuries like Derwin out for the year and someone else out for the year. It's been although we say 2 to 4 weeks, I hope it's not one of them niggly ones, and I hope the procedure went fine. But obviously, they've come out with a little bit of news today that it was one of them ones where he aggravated it a little bit, the Cowboys joint practice, and then he played through it a bit, wasn't improving, so they went in and done a little procedure, as they say. So, yeah, it's one of them ones where it's a little bit... It was a little bit worrying because first off, they didn't have any news for us. So why is he not practicing? And then
Chargers Twitter was going a bit wild over that, wasn't
it was kind of a bit mad. So now we've obviously got a little bit of news, but I'm just hoping that that his recovery isn't too, like Staley said, it's nothing structural or anything like that. So I'm hoping it's just something that it will just heal pretty quickly, and then we can get him sort of on the field in maybe week 2.
Yeah,
I think week 1 might be a push now.
It is looking like a push, like you say. It's looking quite inconvenient in the short term. But just going back to something you mentioned a second ago, you mentioned about having niggly injuries. Remember when a couple of years ago, wasn't it, then Mike Williams came down from a jump ball and he landed badly on his back, didn't he? And that kind of bothered him for the whole season. So you want JC to be right and ready for the whole season. I mean, it makes week 1 tougher because obviously we'll be guarding Devontae Adams probably, which obviously will now go to Michael Davis. Most likely, so that's kind of a downgrade, obviously, and the Chargers will see it like that. Hence why we brought JC in.
Yeah,
so that game gets tougher, but it's not terminal. You know, I think that's what a lot of kind of people online are kind of thinking, that this is kind of terminal, or reacting like, maybe not thinking, but they're reacting like it is a terminal thing, and the Raiders are definitely going to beat us now, which I still don't think is the case. It might be a bit closer and it might be a bit more of a shootout, but you know, it's not a one-man defense, is it? You know, we've got Derwin that we can put on Devontae Adams if he's not on Darren Waller and things like that. We can get past this, I think. It's an annoying one. Hopefully, like I say, coming back for week 2, because coming back and facing the Chiefs, you know, Derwin will be on Travis Kelce pretty much 100% of the time. But, you know, we've got a squad to play with and a roster to play with, so which is obviously leads us on to what we're going to talk about tonight. So, bit of an inconvenient one, like I say. Hopefully, it cures or heals up a little bit quickly, and it doesn't cost us 2, 3, 4 games of JC Jackson. We can kind of hit the ground running. I think the concern came because obviously it's come quite late in the day, but that I think came from, like you say, the lack of information that came out at first. It was just like Daniel Popper's tweet, wasn't it, saying this is injury related, that he wasn't in practice, and it was like everyone went into meltdown, as you say. But you know, we'll see how it goes. We'll kind of revisit this, I guess, in a week or 2 and see if we've got any further news on it. But you know, it's a bit of an annoying one, as we can say.
Definitely.
All right, pal, let's get into this then. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a super basic spreadsheet that I've created with not every single player on the Chargers roster. I believe if I've not miscounted, I've got 70 players in total on this roster. And we're just going to work through position by position and just kind of come to each position, lock in at first in our first kind of run through in green, as we have done down here for the specialists, because shocker, there is only now one specialist for each position now that we have let go James McCourt, and James McCourt is now signed with the Jags. So might be an Irish player in the NFL, but just not with the Chargers. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about the camp battles and the positional battles that will be kind of the decisions that Tom Telesco is making and everyone else on that front office staff is making in a few days' time when we kind of have to lock in this final 53 after that final pre-season game. How's that sound?
Sounds perfect.
Awesome. Okay, let's dive in. So, quarterbacks. Now, this is a bit of a question, isn't it, on Chargers Twitter at the moment, whether to keep 2 or 3. Now, we haven't really discussed this, but I think we should do this in a way that we're predicting what the Chargers would do rather than what we would do, but maybe discuss what we would do as well. Does that sound sensible?
Yeah.
Okay. So, pretty easy that I can just lock in Justin Herbert. I don't think anyone's winning any prizes for that.
Yeah.
However, I think we should come back. I don't think we can lock in either of the other 2 guys. I think we should come back to the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Start off with the running backs then for yourself. Where do you kind of see us going with this one?
Austin Eckler lock in, and I think Isaiah Spiller is a lock in.
Yeah.
Obviously, 4th round pick this year. There's no way they're going to just throw him under the bus after just one preseason.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the other 2 kind of first couple of guys here that are between these 2 guys on the sheet, Joshua Kelly and Larry Roundtree. Maybe worth having a discussion about them a little bit later, whether we'll keep 3, 4 running backs is kind of up for debate, especially with 2 fullbacks on the roster now, and it's not kind of a foregone conclusion. I don't know about you, mate. I know that we mentioned it last week that we're not really paying too much attention to preseason. I haven't heard too much of Kevin Marks or from Leddy Brown in the preseason or from training camp, so I'm pretty much going to rule them out, and it's just kind of between whether we keep 3 or 4 for the running backs. What do you say?
Yeah, I personally think that will be the case anyway. I think that if they were going to have a 5, then it would be Xander anyway, and they'd use him as a running back. So I personally think that that Marks and Brown won't be on the 53.
Okay, yeah, I think we're pretty much in alignment at the moment. Moving on into fullback, it's a bit of a battle, really, isn't it? I think Xander Horvath's ahead. But I get the feeling that they want him to become a bit more of a fullback because at Purdue he was a bit more of a running back, as you say, which might give him more versatility. But I don't think we can lock in either of these 2 guys yet. What do you reckon?
Yep.
What would your preference be? Because we've kind of talked predictively so far, but what would your preference be in terms of this whole running back kind of issue in terms of the mixture of running backs and fullbacks? Do you reckon we should keep as many people as possible, or would it be kind of an extra spot that you could potentially cut later on to kind of sneak someone else in, an extra lineman of one side or the other or something like that, maybe an extra DB now that JC is not fully healthy?
Yeah, I think that they may very well go down that route. I think that it might be a case, depending on if a couple of players maybe aren't fit enough to start the season, they might sneak in 4, but if not, then they might go down the 3. I think it will just come down to, like you said, when we move further along, if we think, actually, there's that position, or are you going to take an extra DB, or are you going to take an extra running back, depending on how these players can interchange?
Okay. I reckon we should just keep it as is then for now and see what roster spots we've got left a little bit later on.
Yep.
Okay, wide receivers. First 4, Jalen Guyton probably going to make the roster as well. We can probably lock those guys in.
Yeah.
DeAndre Carter probably is exactly the same. He's going to be our return man. I know that they're mixing it up a little bit with other players. But he seems to have been brought in for that. And also Brandon Staley's talking a lot about his versatility and that he's not just a kick returner.
Yes. Which
is probably the reason why Andre Roberts isn't here and it's now DeAndre Carter, because Andre Roberts was pretty much just a end around and return specialist. Cool. The other guy that we're hearing a lot, and probably almost like the training camp darling at the moment, seems to be Michael Bandy talking about returning as well. Now, I believe we only kept 5 on the roster last year. Do you reckon they could extend it to 6 and keep Michael Bandy on the roster? Or is it going to be kind of a numbers game?
I think there well could be 6 wide receivers. Yeah, I think there well could be. I think, again, it's... For me, there's a couple of positions where they could go heavy on. If they go heavy on maybe interior defensive line, then we might only be looking at 5. And obviously, if we're saying there's going to be 4 running backs, then maybe we're not going to be taking 5 wide receivers, so 6 wide receivers. So there'll be a few question marks, I think, on a couple of players down the line. But as of now, I would say 5 are locked, and then I think that there is potential for another one to be added. Yeah.
Okay. Let's keep that as it is then for now, and let's come back and discuss whether we've got the numbers to keep a sixth one a little bit later on. Tight ends. We kept 4 last year. Obviously, Stephen Anderson's not here anymore. How do you see this one?
I see 3 definitely, but what I think that they might do is that they might do 4 if Palm starts on pup.
Okay.
So obviously, at the moment, I think that they might even put him on pup anyway, just to get that extra roster position, just so they've got 54. And if they do start him on pup, then they could even bring. That's when that 6 wide receiver comes into play, because obviously you've got Everett and you've got McKitty. So if I'm honest, both of them guys can do. Are more than capable of doing all of the roles that they want. The Chargers want them to do. So it's not like, we've. I know they obviously specialize in certain ones, but I still think they're more than capable of, like, Everett's a good enough blocker to be able to do some blocking, and McKitty's good enough in the vertical game to get some pass catching play. So I think that them two are definitely locked in, McKitty and Everett, and I think it's going to come down to if they put Donald Parham on pup. So I personally think they might do that. Just to get that extra spot opening up before the season. And you never know. You know what Telesco's like. They might then bring someone else in from another one that's been cut. So I think that we took 4 last year, and I think that there's 2 definites. But tight end for me is really up in the air after them 2.
It's one of them, isn't it, where everyone's kind of looking for that step forward from Trey McKitty, and for him to fill this kind of backfield role that Stephen Anderson used to fill. So if you're going to get that leap forward, obviously we know he's a pretty decent blocker anyway, more than a pretty decent blocker, to be fair. And if he's filling that role with his hands a little bit more, catching out the backfield and being able to make those blocks out of the backfield rather than being in line, then that roster spot that Stephen Anderson took up last year is potentially not needed.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how things go. But like you say, I think it's an interesting point that you raised about Parham and Pope. Obviously, they're losing for 4 games. If they did that, we should obviously rule them out of the Chiefs and the Raiders to begin with, as well as 2, I'll say, more simpler games in week 3 and week 4. But, it's not to be sniffed at either, considering the lesser opposition. But yeah, interesting, because Tom Telesco does like these little ways to kind of sneak players onto a roster spot, especially like someone like Michael Bandy, as we've just said. If someone else will be looking at him and his good camp so far, they'll be looking to kind of steal him from us, I reckon. He'll be one of those prime candidates for these young players to go elsewhere. Let's keep it at 2 then for now. Are we saying that?
Yeah, because I do think that just with the news that's been coming out of Chargers camp, it's like he's week to week. We're going to step up his intensity, and he's not really had a preseason yet. So I think that it's a real strong possibility that everyone's going to be like, he's on pup. What are we going to do at tight end? I think that's a real strong possibility that we're going to go there with maybe like a little bit of a hole, not a gaping hole, but a little bit of a hole at that tight end 3, tight end 4 spot.
What do you reckon to the other 3 names on this list? Obviously, we've got Hunter Campbell, Sage Surratt, who was a former wide receiver out of Wake Forest, who's come over late in camp. And then we've got Eric Krumhonak. I'm going to mispronounce that name, but I don't think he's going to be on the Chargers roster anyway. Do you think there's any chance for any of these 3 guys? Maybe Hunter Campbell, who used to be at Oregon with Justin Herbert, potentially?
Yeah, I think that's probably where they would look at as the potential. I think that if he doesn't make the 53, I think that he will be back on the practice squad personally. So, and then, like you said, if you have got that space where, say, if Parham's not fit to start camp, you put him on pup, you bring in a 6th wide receiver, then game specific. They do it all the time where they bring someone up from the practice squad because someone else isn't fit that week, and then Hunter could be the 3rd tight end. So it kind of can work. I think that would be the best way to play it if I was the Chargers. Obviously, if there's someone that gets cut and you're looking at someone decent that can come in straight away and work, then yeah, that's great. But I think that's probably what they might do personally.
Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility in this role. And obviously, I think not only the wide receivers need to be taken into account, but also the 2 fullbacks as well, because some of that backfield stuff could be done by Gabe Neighbors, who has done some tight end fullback stuff at Florida State when he was in college. Okay, lots to talk about in tight ends and the other sort of skill positions, but let's move on into the offensive line. I think the tackle position is pretty simple. Out of the 4, I think the first 3 are locked, and Zach Bailey's just not going to make it. There's not enough room in the inn for a fourth tackle, considering all the other positions that we want to get these guys on. Interesting that Trey Pipkins seems to be taking a bit of a lead at right tackle.
Yeah. Everything we've heard at the moment just seems to be it's Pipkins' job to lose now. So I think that's how they're going to line up week 1. And I think that it's going to be down to his play on the field that keeps him there or not.
Yeah, got to say, I'm pretty happy with that, to be honest. I was really kind of pulling for him and rooting for him, considering that he seemed to have put in a lot of work over the off-season. Obviously going, spending some time with Duke Manyweather, and obviously Rashawn Slater was there along with a load of other elite offensive linemen throughout the NFL. And I just can't imagine him not improving from that sort of environment, you know what I mean? And just kind of improving onwards. And, let's be honest, I think we said in our first pod that he was a 3rd-round pick, so we need to get something from him if we can. If we can be an average starting right tackle in the NFL, with the strength of our offensive line. We'll come on to the guards and centers in a minute, but that's fine. I'm pretty happy with that, to be honest. At least then we feel like we've salvaged something from that pick, even though it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think I listened to a Move the Sticks podcast once, and Daniel Jeremiah was talking about the state of offensive linemen in the league. And sometimes it's not about having them elite prospects. It's just not having anyone that's horrifically bad.
Yeah.
So if we can just get an improvement out of Pipkins and him not be such a turnstile, and I think that will. I think having Zion next to him will help. I've said it before. I think that having someone as a right guard that's not Michael Schofield, that's not just someone else coming in because of an injury, and you've got someone else and you're stuck on an island on your own. I think that his development's not been great because of certain situations that's happened, because of we've had different coaches, we've had loads of different guards. So I think it's been pretty hard for him. I think this is the season where we've actually, like I said, you've got some consistency there now, and you've got a player there with next to him that can help him out. So I think that, as long as, like I said, I'm really hopeful that we've got something to work with from Pipkins. It's just he still worries me, obviously, because I've never been his biggest, or I've never been the biggest admirer of his. I think there was always a reach when we did take him in the 3rd round, but like you said, you can't knock what he's done this offseason in development. And it's kind of similar when we talk about Rumph, where if you've got people in the building like Slater, and you've got people there like Filer and Zion and Lindsay, that you've got them sort of caliber players as offensive linemen, how can you not learn? How can you not learn from these guys? So I think that having all them guys there, and obviously with the coaches being there, the same from last year, that I think that it should be an improvement year for Pipkins.
Yeah, absolutely, and not to kind of completely write off Storm Norton. Hopefully he's going to be keeping himself ready to step in at any point and kind of pushing Trey Pipkins as much as possible. And that healthy competition that Brandon Staley speaks about all the time is hopefully going to keep Pipkins on his toes. And he can't really, in the mindset that he can't really afford to have a bad game, or to to really kind of wreck a game for Justin Herbert and the Chargers offense. So he's got to be kind of ready himself to step in all the time. So hopefully that'll be a good group. And as much as I said recently that the most recent sort of example, the most recent film we've got and memory that we've got of Storm Norton is being a turnstile against Max Crosby, he's not been horrific in every single game. So we've got kind of something there that maybe he can come in every now and then and be a relief pitcher almost, and take some snaps and take a series here and there if someone's a bit banged up. Nice and easy then for the offensive tackles, but lots to talk about, and hopefully not too much movement, but some potential movement throughout the season. Moving into the interior, then obviously we've got the 3 starters absolutely locked in, and then we've got the 2 recent draft picks. I think Brendan Hymus and I think Jamari Salyer are pretty much locked in as well as recent draft picks, development players behind. And I think Salyer really is kind of exciting, as someone who's played guard, he's someone who's played tackle, and obviously with that kind of question mark around the right side, can he be the one? I don't think he's got he didn't really strike me as a tackle kind of prospect coming out of Georgia. He struck me as a guard, even though he had played all across the offensive line apart from centre. But I don't think he's got the movement skills to be an NFL tackle. But in a pinch again, maybe he can do a job. I don't know. But I think he's going to be a really valuable player moving forward and a good development piece moving forward for the Chargers. Good player moving forward. However, do you feel that either Will Clapp or Ryan Hunter will be there in support of them, or do you think there's a roster decision to be made later on?
I think there's a roster decision to be made just because of I think how well that Hunter's done in the preseason. There has been talk that he's done pretty well. So there could be a decision to make, because I know that obviously Will Clapp knows somebody anyway. But I think that there could be a decision there for him to make, where it could be, do you go with somebody you know, or someone that's playing better than him? So that's probably a decision to be made for them guys and for us in a bit.
Yeah, for sure, because we're obviously a lineman short, I would say, with only 8 in green at the moment. So definitely be a 9th one. And like I say, it is a bit of a funny one, isn't it? With obviously as you just said, someone you know versus someone who's playing a little bit better at the moment. But anyway, like you say, that's a conversation for a little bit. But let's flip down to defense for a second and flip over to the other line on the other side of the ball. How are we kind of seeing this?
Interior defensive line is tough, man. That is the hardest position to know who's taken and who not. For me, there's 3 that's going to definitely go, which obviously one shouldn't really be going, but that's another story. Sebastian Dosiste, Austin Johnson, Jerry Tillery are all locked in. And then, if I'm honest, it wouldn't shock me if any of them guys got left out. Put it that way. It would not shock me if they came back and they were like, he's not in the 53, or he's not in the 53, or he's not in the 53. I don't know about you, if there's someone there you'd say it's definitely in it.
I feel like they're going to want a lot of bodies. So as much as there's some tough decisions to be made, I feel like there's bodies to fill them as well. So I think it's not got too bad of a sort of mathematical issue, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
I think as well, I think you can pretty much lock in a Tito Ogbonnia. I really think you can lock him in, because I think he's the bigger guy out of all the other kind of non-green players that we've got here, as well as Braden Foko. But obviously Braden Foko's an undrafted free agent, as much as everyone loves him, and as much as he brings a lot of energy and everything else to the team, and when he has played, he's played pretty well, especially against the run. I think they've invested, although a day 3 pick in a Tito Ogbonnia, I think they're going to keep him. So I would be happy to green him as well and kind of lock him in.
Yeah.
They've also brought in Morgan Fox as well, who I think is the next closest, but maybe there's more conversation to be had. Kristen Covington, obviously on the team last year. Joe Gaziano always seems to hang around anyway.
Yeah.
Let's just keep it as 3 for now, but maybe it's a little brief conversation where we can lock a few guys in when we know who we've kept and whatnot, because obviously we've got some decisions to make in the next group as well with the edge rushers. Now, I've included Carl Van Noy in the edge rushers because I think that's going to be his primary role when everyone's healthy, and I'm hoping that everyone's going to be healthy. So I feel like those 4 can be locked in. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Carl Van Noy, and Chris Rumpf. And I'm not sure anyone else makes it, to be honest. I'm not sure Emeka Egbele makes it. I'm not sure we're going to have really seen, as much as we don't see him, obviously, because we don't see training camp, but I'm not sure we've heard about or seen any improvement from him. And he was always brought in from Houston as this hybrid of a linebacker and an edge, and he's now kind of just an edge, and Carl Van Noy kind of does that as well. So I'm not sure that we can see too much movement there. Obviously, they let Ty Shelby go just last night, and Jamal Davis is hanging around from the CFL. And again, unless you can tell me differently, I don't think I've heard too much out of him from camp either.
No, I think as soon as Carl Van Noy signed, I think that you can kiss goodbye to Egbele. To be honest, I think that's him done. I think, and I think that there is still a burning question if you are taking Jamal Davis. There has been rumblings that he's a fringe bubble candidate.
Okay,
but I think that it's still a long shot for him to make it, just where if you look at the other positions and where you would need certain areas, I think that it's going to be really tough for him to make that roster. So at the moment, 4 lock-ins, 100%. I think them 4 are definites. And then after that, it becomes a bit murky.
It sounds like a lot, doesn't it? 53 men, but it's not.
It's not.
It's really not, especially when you've got a lot of good players. And obviously you need heavy reliance on some of the positions, defensive back, defensive line, offensive line. Obviously, we know that the troubles that we've had with offensive line, so you want to take more.
Yeah.
But, it's not a lot of players, even though it seems like on the face of it. Yeah. Anyway, let's move forward. So Kenneth Murray returns to the practice field this week, which is great news. Although, again, much in the same sort of form as you've been talking about with Jerry Tillery. Some people may not see that as a good thing, but I do. A healthy Kenneth Murray can be an asset to this team. Drew Tranquill's locked in, and I think Troy Reeder's locked in as well because he's got that scheme, knowledge of this, the way this works and the language and everything else. And I think he's pretty much locked in.
Yeah.
Do you see it any differently?
No,
first and foremost.
I think them three. Obviously, some people might classify Carl Van Noy as a linebacker. So when the 53 come out, you might see 4 edge and Carl Van Noy not be in it, and you'll be like, oh, hang on a minute, but he'll be in the linebacker. So it'll be depending on, again, like you said, position versatility, where you see some of these. I think it's more to do with maybe not certain position battles, but certain player battles, like you said, as soon as Carl Van Noy signed, then you can eliminate Egbule, and you can, when someone else signs, you can eliminate them. So I think that it can come down to them sort of things. But I think, like you said, with them 3, Murray, Tranquill, and Reeder, I think that they're pretty much locked in.
Yeah, I would say so. Nick Neiman, obviously, special teams ace. Obviously, invested a draft pick in him last year. Eamon Ogbongbaniga, he seems to be kind of a darling of training camp last year, and a lot of Chargers fans kind of on side with having him and around, but we'll kind of come to that later on. And obviously, Cole Christensen has played some reps for the Chargers, albeit not on his roster as good as this one. So we'll kind of see where that plays out later on. Anyway, let's move on into the cornerbacks. Now, first and foremost, just something that's just kind of reminded myself almost when I talked about the PUP list earlier on and JC Jackson. Now, they've obviously opted not to put JC Jackson on the PUP. Does that mean that they think that he'll be back before 4 weeks, which obviously is a good sign? So I think we've got to lock him in for this. I don't think we can kind of leave him off.
I don't think he'll go on PUP. I personally think that there's, I think that how they're talking at the moment, unless there's a sort of a reoccurrence of the rehabilitation that doesn't quite work, that maybe then I think they'd give it another week personally anyway, just to see how it's healing, how he's doing with it. But I think that hopefully we're getting back week 2, week 3.
Yeah, and it's not the biggest operations in the world, is it? We say that touching wood and everything else that you want to do to bring luck, but it doesn't seem like it. Everything about it is very routine and things like that. So we'll kind of see how this plays out. But yeah, I'm happy to lock in JC, Sante, Bryce Callahan, and Michael Davis as well.
Yep.
Obviously, over the past few weeks, we've kind of mentioned it ourselves that the DBs seem to have been balling out as well. And Jasir Taylor and Dean Leonard seem to have been playing really, really well. Keemon Hall is one that I always feel like Brandon Staley mentions him a lot with regards to special teams as well. So as much as I don't see them keeping 7 corners, especially when they've got this sort of scheme versatility they want between the safeties as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of decisions to be made, I think, with the DBs as a whole, I think.
Yeah. At one point you could even argue that Campbell was a bubble. Obviously he's been cut now, but at one point you could really argue that, oh, hang on a minute, he might be one on the 50, he might be one of the 53. So yeah, there's some really tough decisions to make at DB, especially like you said with the safeties that can interchange, and you got the special man Derwin there as well that can pretty much play any position he wants. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see who they keep and who gets cut, really.
With regards to Taylor, Leonard, or Hall, are we just leaving it as is at the moment, or are we looking at anyone else in particular?
I think we're leaving it as is at the moment. I think it's really, really hard between them 3, to be honest. Who's gonna kind of make it?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Happy to leave it because we've got some decisions to make elsewhere. So happy to leave it as kind of blank as possible almost. So we've got as much flexibility moving into the second part of this.
Yeah.
And like you say, moving into safeties, Derwin, Nas, JT, locked in. But then we've got some decisions to make as well, I think. Just piggybacking off of what we've just kind of said.
Yeah.
Mark Webb, still injured, is he? Remind me.
Yes.
He is, isn't he? Yeah. Alohi Gilman's obviously been hanging around as that 4th safety for quite a while as well. Raheem Lane has been getting some pretty decent reps, I think, and getting some buzz. Ben DeLuca, probably not going to make it. He's been hanging around the practice squad for a little bit. Yeah. Probably could be replaced on the practice squad by a DB that doesn't make it, like Hall or Lane, as we kind of refresh that unit. But we're not really just going to talk about practice squad for this because we'd be here all night. So happy just to keep it as JT, Nasir, and obviously Derwin.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, right. I'm just going to very, very quickly run through just so we can see how many people we've kind of mentioned and how many people we've got. So we've got 4. This is going to be terrible radio. For a moment, while I just tap in the numbers into our spreadsheet here, we've got 5. 3 defensive linemen, 4 edge, 3 linebackers, 4 corners as we stand, and then 3 more, which gives us a roster total just off the page of 34. Okay, so we've got tons to play with. We've got 19 spots to fill, and we'll kind of put this up as we kind of go, and then reveal all as we go back there, as we talk. Okay. Is there any way where you want to start? We don't necessarily have to come through it in the same order, I don't think, in the second way around. Where's the most important position to hit up and get these guys locked in, do you think?
Well, personally, I think that you can lock in Chase Daniel and Easton Stick. It might not be what we want to do, but I think that everything that they've been talking about and points to that they're going to be keeping 3 quarterbacks on the roster just because of Staley's comments after the last preseason game, and it just seems like it's a lock that they're going to be keeping 3 guys on the roster. So however much that Chargers fans might want to moan or whatever they want to
and
do, there will be some, and some of them have got probably some good points to make about that. But at the end of the day, I think that they will just keep 3. I think that the Chase Daniel, Easton Stick and Justin Herbert are pretty much locked in.
I would agree with that, to be honest with you, and I might not sound the most excited to agree with you, but that's nothing to do with what you've said, because I agree with everything you've said. It's all to do with Staley's comments, isn't it, after the games, and just the way he talks about Easton Stick having improved and things like that, although he's still not played a regular season snap, I don't think. But yeah, it's exactly how you said it, really. It's, they're kind of locked in. Chase is kind of the old man of the room, and he's there to kind of be the sort of coach in the room, almost the second coach on the room alongside Shane Day.
Yeah.
Easton, really, to be fair to him, as much as he's never had a snap and he doesn't seem to be having any kind of plays worked into the playbook for him, he also seems like he's a very bright guy as well, and he gets talked about in that sense quite a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can kind of see him sticking around as well, as much as there will be complaints about it. So I'm going to pop that up to 3 in the quarterbacks as we agree on where we're going with that. Okay, moving on then. So I really think that we should look at the defensive line, because I think this is going to be a really important position moving forward. So I think we need to lock in and decide who we kind of want in this grouping. Okay.
Yeah.
I personally, like I said before, I would be happy to lock in Ogbonnia and kind of put him in there as a kind of player that we've invested a pick in, and like I say, a similar player to Joseph Day and Austin Johnson, and be a bigger guy on the line as a run stuffer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I also am tempted just to lock in Morgan Fox as well, as someone who is going to be the kind of backup to Jerry Tillery as the more of the pass rusher amongst everyone on that group. So we've put in another couple there. I'm almost tempted to come back for round 3, because I almost really feel like I want Braden Poco on this roster, just because of the kind of, the dumpster fire that was the run defense last year. And as much as we brought in Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson, I won't mind an extra body, just to be in there, and because he's such an elite run defender. And obviously he's still young, and I think he just brings a lot of energy. I don't think that can be underestimated, the kind of positivity and the energy that someone can bring to a roster. I know we said a minute ago that it's, there isn't a lot of leeway, there's not a lot of spare spots just to kind of have a cheerleader, but he's one that I keep around because I think he's got some skills as well. So I'm not going to put him in yet, but I'll be happy if we've got a roster spot left over at the end, and I'll be putting him in. For me anyway, I don't know about you, how you feel about it.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's going to come down to if they need a body. Like you said, you've got his run defense is one of the best on the team, so you can't really deny how he is in that. But I think that it's going to kind of maybe depend on if Austin Johnson and Ogbonnia kind of are enough in their eyes, because I just think that, like you said, with other positions and other scarcities in some positions, that you don't want to be carrying people just because we need to make up the 53.
Yeah.
Not that I think you are carrying him. I just think that there's some really important decisions to be made in some other areas, and if you're taking 6 D linemen and maybe only 3 edge, if you're saying Van Noy's a linebacker, then maybe we're just missing that edge guy. But then if you're saying Tillery and Fox are sort of like that pass rushing DT, is that enough to only carry 3 edge? There's going to be some really interesting decisions to make in that regard. I think that D line especially is going to be real. There's going to be 1 or 2 players let go that on another given week they would have made the 53.
Yeah, there's going to be some players, like you say, that can play for other teams in the league because we've got such a deep roster in some positions and a lot of talent. Just one player that we've not really mentioned too much, Christian Covington. As much as he's a vet, I don't think he's making enough money to kind of protect him from being cut. So I don't think he's that, he's not kind of locked in just from his veteran status, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And I don't think he was that good last year either.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to... He'd be on about one... I think he's just over $1 million, but if he's cut, it's only about 150 dead cap. So I think they brought him in... Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think they brought him in before it all was going mad in free agency. I think they brought him back as a Telesco insurance policy that
we talked about this a lot.
If we don't get Sebastian Joseph Day and we don't get Austin Johnson, we've got a fallback of Christian Covington that is plan B. At least we've got a plan B. That's our plan B. But I think that because of how the preseason's gone and the draft picks we've got and the people we've been able to pick up and the additions we've had, it's just bumped him down the line. I think it's going to be really, really hard to keep him on the roster because he doesn't do anything really, really well.
This is it. This is why I'd rather have Braden Foco because, he does something really well.
Yeah. I think if I'm honest, when we got Fox, I think that was it. I think that was the last piece that they wanted to acquire, and then that meant Covington wouldn't be on that D line.
In the same way that what you just said a minute ago about signings kind of ruling other players out.
Yeah, because there's been if you look at probably the most, say, 2 or 3 most recent additions that we've had in regards to bringing players in, it's Morgan Fox, it's Carl Van Noy, and you could probably argue it's Troy Reader. So there's someone in them groups is now not going to make it. And I think that Van Noy means Agbule's not going to make it. I think that Morgan Fox means Covington's not going to make it. And then the decision is at linebacker, if Troy Reader's there, who's not going to make it.
So just kind of piggybacking off what you've said then, just take us to another position then in terms of the importance of getting one of these guys or 2 of these guys on the 53. I know it's a really tough one. I'm just going to shove that into you there.
Yeah, it's really tough. Again, for me, it's a toss up with how they put Carl Van Noy in this as an edge, because you could argue, is Jamal Davis more important than Nick Nyman? Do you know what I mean? Is he more important having a third sort of rusher rather than just someone that's all right at special teams? Like, it's one of them ones where it's really difficult to say if you're going to take one of them linebackers over Jamal Davis. That would where I would be with it. Is you've got Tranquil, you've got Murray, you've got Reader, and if you've got Van Noy, you've got 4.
Yeah.
And if you're only playing, most of the time you're only going to be playing 2. And then if you can, and then you can use Derwin as a 3. So all of a sudden why are we taking 5 linebackers if Van Noy's one of them? So that's where it would be for me, is you've got, if you're talking about we've got safeties that have got super versatility. So if you're going to be dropping some of these guys in the box, why you need to take 3 linebackers for bait? Because for most of the time you won't ever be in base with 3 linebackers.
Yeah, true. That's a really good point, actually. A lot of nickel, a lot of dime, obviously. Derwin dropping down, obviously JT Woods, as we've kind of discussed, being that kind of deeper safety. Obviously Adelaide can do that as well. So and obviously a Gilman then comes into the fray, doesn't he? Because obviously he can drop down as well. So no, you're right. It's really, really kind of difficult to kind of pitch this and get this correctly. Let's kind of kick the can down the road then, I would say, and let's flip it back onto offense and see what we can get out of here. Just kind of lock up. I don't think we've got too much to do on offense now, to be honest. Yeah, let's kind of lock it up. For me, on the offensive line, I reckon that considering that the whole kind of drive in the off season is all to do with getting people who know the system, getting people who are familiar with the terminology, I still reckon Will Clapp would be there. Yeah, because I'm certain they could get Ryan Hunter on the practice squad.
Yeah,
and have him around. So I'd be happy to lock in Will Clapp. As much as Ryan Hunter's not, Ryan Hunter has outplayed him, I still feel like they're going to go with the familiarity.
Yep.
I'm going to knock that up to 6. I think that completes the offensive line as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Running back. I feel like Josh Kelly is taken. I think he stole a march on every other one of the running backs, to be honest. Maybe including Isaiah Spiller in terms of that running back 2 spot. So I'd be happy to lock him in. I haven't heard a great deal about Larry Roundtree either. So as much as they probably do want to keep him around because they did invest a draft pick in him, I don't think it'd be the end of the world considering they've got Spiller.
Yeah.
If someone did kind of steal him, after a final roster cut and they couldn't sneak him on the practice squad.
Yeah.
But then it comes down to how do these 3 guys go? Because we're discluding Kevin Marks and Leddie Brown now. How does Larry Roundtree, Xander Horvath, and Gabe Neighbours come in?
I personally think Xander's making the 53. I think they invested the pick in him. I think that they obviously saw a role for him from the draft, and I think that he's locked in regards to for his specific role. So, and if, like you said, if they're going to use him as the 4 running back, then Roundtree becomes cuttable. But if they don't, then Roundtree is a serious consideration for the 53. So that again would be the tough decision now is Roundtree, dependent on other positions that we need and we want, is he cuttable? And if the answer is yes, then we just take 3 and we use Xander as the 4th running back. But if you get to the end of it and you're like, there is space for having a 4th guy, then all of a sudden he's in play for the 53. But at the moment, just how we are with numbers, I would say that he is a real fringe player.
I would agree. I don't think he really set the world alight at any point last year. I don't think he'd ever looked exciting. It's just bad to say because he's a rookie coming into the league, and running back's a difficult position to learn, and especially coming in and being expected to perform at a high level, taking over from what Joshua Kelly was in that position, obviously having someone kind of coming in to supersede him, and they've obviously both in that position now with Isaiah Spiller coming in. It's difficult. But I guess it comes down to what do you want? Do you want a Larry Roundtree? Do you want a Gabe Neighbours? Or do you want a 4th tight end? Because that role can be kind of interchangeable depending on how the other pieces move around.
Yeah.
As much as what I hear what you're saying about Parham being put on PUP, I think because he's not being put on it yet, I think we should lock him in.
Okay.
Until we kind of get that confirmed, and then we can kind of work from there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think McKitty can do some of that backfield stuff. So I think he negates the reason to keep Neighbours around. Because again, as much as Neighbours almost like, you're keeping around for Justin Herbert because he's his best mate. Do you know what I mean? It's just feels a little bit like, I know we were talking about a couple of weeks, this is completely off track and off piece almost for this podcast. But I know we were talking a couple of weeks back, weren't we, about old World Cups that we used to watch as kids. Yeah. And talk about Zidane. And I just remember from Zidane kind of being really good mates with Christophe Dugarry, and that being the reason why he was in the French squad the whole time. I feel like Neighbours almost takes on that role. But with a 53-man squad where you can only, in roster where you can only get so many people on there and you've got so much, I don't know if he's kind of a good reason to keep him on just because he's the quarterback's best mate and housemate still by the looks of things. So I'm happy to keep it as it is right now.
Yeah, I think so. I think, like you said, the interesting one is if they do put Palm on PUP, and it wouldn't. This is just for Chargers fans listening. It wouldn't surprise me if they do want to sneak somebody onto that roster where they're desperate for him not to make waivers. They're desperate for him not to make waivers, and the easiest thing to do is if they don't think Palm's ready, is put him on PUP, let it clear, get him on the practice squad, and then you just bring him up after 4 games, bring the other guy down to the practice squad. It's done. You've locked him in. You snuck him on. It's done.
Yeah, no, it's like I say, it's a typical Tom Telesco way to do it, as you mentioned before.
Yeah.
Okay, mate. Well, so we're up to 45, so we've got 8 positions to go. The only real one that I'd really want to get on, although not maybe immediately, is Michael Bandy. I feel like he could be the 53rd guy who we kind of sneak on. At the minute, we've got 23 on offense, which seems about right. Maybe one more, and then we're down to 19 on D, which is way short of what we need to get on there. So we need to add 5 or 6 players to one and maybe sneak Michael Bandy on it. Is the way I'm kind of looking at it right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we should start with defensive backs. I feel like we can add quite a few. I think we've got room now. We've given ourselves a lot of room.
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of treat this as all one position in terms of the DBs. I feel like Jasir Taylor as the Bryce Callahan kind of backup, the most natural backup, as though, we've got Asante there as well. I feel like Dean Leonard and I feel like Gilman, I feel like they're in.
Yeah.
Do you see it any different?
The only one that might not be is Leonard, personally.
Okay.
I think
feel
Taylor,
like he's had like a lot of good camp sort of talk about him. I feel like that's why I want to put him in. I know he was a 7th rounder. I mean, him and Taylor were obviously, but how do you kind of see it? What makes you kind of say that?
Just because I think that I personally view Derwin as a DB so much that it's like, do you need to take 7 corners as such? Because you could argue that Derwin is our 2nd best corner. So
yeah.
So like you're talking about players that have. I can see a defined role for Taylor. That's how I see it. I can see Taylor as that slot. Whereas there has been talk that Leonard is more of a safety stroke corner. So you're squeezing him on the roster and there's no, like, for me, it's like Covington. There's no real thing that there is a reason why he should be on the 53 above other players. So that would be my only one. I would definitely say Taylor has got that role of that Bryce Callahan role. Obviously, we've got Samuel as well, but if you put Samuel out wide, Callahan gets injured and maybe we lose a defensive back, say if obviously JC's not there for the first 2 weeks, you want to trust someone that knows the role and can slot straight in, which I think Taylor would be that, whereas Leonard, I still don't know kind of what his role would be. So personally for me, Taylor, yes. Gilman, yes. I think Gilman is getting a lot of buzz just from a standpoint of they've been talking about leadership wise, character.
Yeah, that's important.
I think that he's worked his way up into. Before, I was thinking that he would probably not make it, especially after the draft. I was thinking, I'm not sure if he could, especially taking JT Woods and then 2 corners. I'm not sure, especially if Mark Webb progresses, but I'm pretty sure I would say Gilman is a lock really for 53.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to have him in there. As you mentioned, there's all good points that you've made there, really. With Leonard, I feel like they drafted him for his athletic upside. He was super athletic, and I feel like they can kind of mould him. I feel like he's a little ball of clay that they can mould. So yeah, we'll kind of keep it where we are right now, and maybe again he'll be one of these 52, 53 kind of person on the roster. We've got up to 21 on D. Looking at this now, who are we looking at? We're looking at Braden Foco, we're looking at Nick Neiman, and then we're coming back to the same guys. Yeah,
I mean, I personally would you can get rid of Ben DeLuca.
Yeah.
And I think you can get rid of the 3 tight ends, two of the tight ends, definitely. Zach Bailey's definitely not going to make it. And then it's kind of in a consideration if you've got like 6 positions left, you say, out of the 53. So I think that Marks and Brown are gone. So you're talking Roundtree.
Well, let's start deleting these people off. Yeah. While you're talking through. Okay.
So I think they're gone. I think Bradford's gone.
DeLuca as well, didn't you? Gaziano, we've not really mentioned.
Yeah, I think he'll be. I think he'll go practice squad. I think he'll be prime candidate for practice squad. Gaziano.
Okay.
I think Bradford's gone as the wide receiver.
Jason Moore. He seems to always hang around. He seems like he's on the roster for about 5 years.
I think he's going to be a practice squad guy. I think it's going to be. I think that Zach Bailey's gone as well. So now you're talking. Yeah. And I personally think Egbule's gone.
Yes, you said, didn't you? Yeah. Christensen.
I think Cole Christensen's gone. I think practice squad is possible. I think.
That's it, isn't it?
I think now you're talking about the players left is the fight for the 6 spots now.
Okay. So looking at this, I think we're concentrating on defense at the moment. I think we can only really afford to get one more person on offense at the minute because we've got the numbers there. I feel like Nick Neiman. I feel like I want to put him in because that special teams is going to be really important. I think. Yeah. I think that's obviously a weakness of the team last year.
And we were talking about roles as well. Like I said, I think that he's got a role in that special teams.
Yeah, 100%. So we'll pop that up to 4. So we are up to 48 overall, and we've got 22 on D. So we've got 5 to go.
Mm-hmm.
Let's have a little think about who we could put in.
Oh, I think Mark Webb's. I think he's in.
If he's fit.
If he's fit, he's in.
Yeah, and we've done this of the point of view of everyone's kind of fit, haven't we? So
yeah,
let's go for that. So 5 players. It seems like we've got a lot of choice now. Actually, the way we've done this, Foco, Leonard, I'd be inclined to kind of put them in because we've got the numbers to do it.
Yeah, I think that Lane's out. I think he's gone, and
Squad.
I think Joe Reed's out.
Yeah, well. I would say so as well.
I think it's between. I think Moore would maybe even get ahead of him, to be honest, over Joe Reed now
because of experience and because he's been around. And
yeah, I think that if Parnham's fit, I think Hunter's not in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he'll be. I think he's prime practice squad candidate as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So now we're talking. There's 49. We've got 4 spots left. You've got. Are you taking Neighbours? Are you taking Roundtree, Bandy, and Moore? Personally, I think that at the moment it's probably Bandy over Moore. So you could probably say Moore is a prime practice squad candidate. So that leaves one of them 3.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that.
That goes on. And then defensively, I personally think this is where it gets really difficult. Really, really difficult. And it's going to come down to where you think certain players, where your need is because of a role.
Yeah, I would go through that. I think that's a really good analysis. I would personally, I think the front of the queue for me out of everyone that we've kind of still got on here, I think is Braden Foco.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're looking at the mixture, as you mentioned before, of interior and edge, I feel like Jerry can play a little bit of edge in a 4 because he did that a little bit last year.
Yeah.
You've also got more Fox who can play a little bit of defensive end in a 4
Yeah.
if we're kind of switching to that hybrid front. And then you've got your other sort of 2 in the middle, sort of 3 with Ogbonnia as well. So I feel like we can put that in, and it gives us a pretty deep defensive line there that we can kind of rely on in both pass and run situations.
Yeah,
Covington, as we mentioned before, is a pretty cheap cut and wouldn't cost us a lot of dead cap.
I think we touched on it earlier. I think if Foco's in, I think that, and with the signing of Morgan Fox, I think that is pretty much the final nail. I think that Covington, he was on the bubble, but I think the Fox signing was probably
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Straw.
So who's at the front of the queue for yourself now for these final 3 spots?
It's tough.
Where are you looking? What's your kind of priority, do you think?
I'm not sure. I think that if you had to pin me to a name, I think that they're going to keep Jamal Davis.
Do you think? Okay, that's interesting.
Because I think that Davis will get in just because of his as an edge rusher. Because again, like I just think
gives us a bit more depth, right?
I just think that how our defense is going to be set up. Why would you need to keep any more linebackers? Like, why would you need to keep any more? Like everyone was saying in the draft that we should have maybe drafted a linebacker and we didn't. And then they've just gone out and just got Troy Reader just off a whim because they just needed to get another guy in the building. Basically, is kind of what that screams to me is let's get someone with a bit of familiarity to what we're going to be playing and just get another body in. And that's what they got Reader in. And I think that Reader made the 4th guy because as soon as Kaiser White left, they just got another guy in, not obviously to play Kaiser's position, but just as another body as their 4 linebackers. And I think that's why, for me, they would only keep 4. But if you're going to say Kyle Van Noy is a linebacker, then that would be the 5.
And that would mean it'd be 4 sort of definite edge rushers, let's say, with Davis.
Yeah, with Davis.
Rumpf and then Mack and Bosa, obviously.
I think so. I think just because he does something better than anybody else that you've got left, like no one else is giving you any more edge rush appeal other than Davis. So, and what do we say? You can't have 2 lesser edge rushers, cornerbacks, and offensive linemen, really, can you? So, like, that's where it would stump me, really.
Yeah, no, I'd take that. I'd agree with that. I will put in Jamal Davis. I've taken Ogbongbemiga out, and I'll potentially, kind of, if we can sneak him on the practice squad, then I'd be happy to do that. obviously he was active for quite a few games last year, so happy to kind of have that there in reserve, I would say. But we'll kind of see where we're going to go with that one. And the kind of then we've got 2 spots left. We've got 51 players on the roster. I'd be inclined to put in Dean Leonard.
Yeah.
And then I think we've got a decision to make up top.
Yeah.
As much as Keemon Hall is a player that we talk about on special teams, obviously with them being 7th round picks, Jasir Taylor and Dean Leonard are going to have to play special teams anyway.
Yeah.
So, having another specialist, kind of special teamer almost, then kind of what's the point, if you see what I'm saying? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of difficult to kind of justify kind of giving everyone a roster spot just because they're good at special teams when we're going to have a bunch of guys who are going to need to play that role.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I think Hall would have only made it if Webb wasn't going to be fit. That would be
that's true.
Opinion.
That's true.
So again, I think that if if you don't see Webb on the pup list, then Hall won't be in the 53. But if we see a position where Webb is starting on the pup, then I think Hall will be that extra guy that they'll add on that D. But I'm pretty certain, to be honest, that will be the defensive unit that they'll keep.
Yeah, and that then takes us up to 26 players, which is about right, I would say, especially with the versatility that we've got on all 3 levels, really.
Yeah.
So then it's just between Gabe Neighbours, Larry Roundtree, and Michael Bandy. What's your kind of gut telling you for this one?
I think they'll cut Neighbours because I think that you're more than capable of getting someone like that on practice squad. And I think that they will keep him on the practice squad. I think that they'll clear waivers quite easily, and I think that he'll hang around. So I think it's now going to become, do you take 4 running backs or do you take an extra wide receiver? And again, I think that it's going to come down to, if Palm's not 100%, I think that they might take Roundtree.
It can go either way, can't it?
Yeah.
It can kind of be looked at either way. Do you go for the experience of Roundtree, or do you go for the guy who has had a good camp in Michael Bandy? Michael Bandy also gives you another return option, as we've kind of been seeing a little bit, and he's been playing really well. I would personally go that way, because I think
I personally would as well, but I personally think that Roundtree will make it. I think that Roundtree will make it, and I think that if Parham, like you said, if it doesn't start on pup, then I think Roundtree will be. We didn't want it to be 3 quarterbacks and 4 running backs, but I just think it will be. I think that that's the way they will go. But
so does that come into any consideration that they almost pointlessly keep him 3 quarterbacks, and then you've got this position this dichotomy between Michael Bandy and then Larry Roundtree, let's say, because if we're saying we're going to get rid of Neighbours, because I'm pretty happy with that myself.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, can we not just get rid of Stick, and because he's not going to play any snaps, and then you've got 2 impactful players. I think you're right. I think going back to our early decision, I think we've locked in 3 quarterbacks for the right reasons. Let's go for the experience then. Let's go for Roundtree. Especially because,
like I said, I just think that's how they will do it, but it's not necessarily how I would want to do it. I think
no.
I mean, I would quite like to see Ryan Hunter stay on as the 53 personally, just because of our history with offensive linemen. That worries me more than keeping 4 running backs. If it was a case of keeping Roundtree or Ryan Hunter, for me it would be easily Hunter, but I personally don't think that they will. I think that Ryan Hunter will be one of them practice squad guys. But yeah, it's going to be, it'll be interesting to see how them last couple of spots are. I think, like you said, you talked about how many guys are definites, but there will be a couple of them that are still, we've talked about it, is if Webb's not fit, Hall might be in it. Covington is still a bubble, even though we think he might not be. Bandy's a bubble. Roundtree's a bubble. If Parham's not fit, that they might keep an extra guy on. Hunter's a bubble. So I think we've got it about right, but there will still be a couple of names that might bounce around, or one that might shock rather than
well,
we think we're not getting.
You say we've got it right. I don't know if you've noticed since you've been talking there and running through that. I was just updating the numbers. and I've made a mistake, and we've got 54 now. So
Roundtree don't make it. Then,
are we
so
taking Roundtree out? That's nice and simple.
Personally, yeah, he's the bubble. He's the bubble. He's the line, basically. And then, anyone who wants to make the 53 needs to just be better than Roundtree, basically, is what we're saying.
And then we've got, obviously, the fitness decisions between Parham, we've got Matt Webb, and then you might get one of these two guys on there. Keelan Hall might make it, but I'm not going to remove those three, because I think those three guys are probably the ones that are 54, 5, and 6, with Roundtree, Bandy, and Keelan Hall.
Yeah,
to make that.
And I would say as well, Hunter will be practice squad, and he'll be in and
around as well.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
If anything happens, like the next week or so, you never know. Obviously, you know what we're like. Touch wood, it doesn't, but he'll be on the cusp of the practice squad for sure. And if we need an offensive lineman brought up from week to week, he will be one of the guys. All
right, then. There you have it. So we've got 53-man roster. We've got 3 quarterbacks, 3 running backs in the end after we erased my error. A fullback in Xander Horvath, 5 wide receivers, same as what we took last year. 3 tight ends rather than 4, and then 9 offensive linemen between both offensive tackles and interior offensive line. 6 defensive linemen, 5 edge rushers, 4 linebackers, 6 corners, and 5 safeties, along with 3 specialists to make up the 53. And that is our 53-man roster prediction for the 2022 season, all wrapped up in just over an hour. I'm sure it doesn't take that short of a time when Tom Telesco's working through it with his staff, with Brandon Staley. But yeah, pretty happy with that. I think we've gone through it pretty kind of intensively, really, and we kind of made the right decisions there. I'm pretty happy. I think we've got the right guys in there, and I think we've left the 3 guys who were closest on the edge as well.
Yeah. One question for you before we shoot.
Yeah, go for it.
There's a player that's in our 53 that if someone got cut, don't have to name a player that got cut, but what is a position you think that they might, if someone got cut that's half decent, would they look to add into our roster? Where do you think that we're lacking in depth? Maybe if there was a cut and you're thinking actually a position would be nice to add.
Yeah. It's not an easy. It's not. Sorry, let me start again. It's not a creative answer. It's going to be right tackle. If one of the veteran right tackles out there gets cut, and he's going to be pretty cheap, and he's going to be better than Storm Norton or Trey Pipkins, why not? You know what I mean? And as much as we've just been talking about Storm Norton and Trey Pipkins kind of pushing each other and having that competition, can we afford to have that kind of question mark on the roster? I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
I think edge might be one where if someone got cut and you can see some sort of role, that if he's better than Jamal Davis, obviously we've added him in the 53. If they look at that and think, actually, this guy's better, we're going to get more out of him. He's a bit more versatile, maybe can come rushing from inside and out, etc. That I think that they might look at another edge guy on the market if someone gets cut.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. That's another good shout, to be fair. Probably more creative answer than my one as well. But yeah, there we have it. There's our 53-man roster prediction here at the Powder Blue Report here as part of the Full 10 Yards Network. We were back next week with an AFC roundtable. Ash is on holiday, so we may or may not be broadcasting from France.
Might be broadcasting from Bonjour France.
Whether we see him or not, we'll kind of TBC. But we'll be on here with a Raiders fan, a Broncos fan, and a Chiefs fan. And we'll be looking forward to kind of quizzing those guys and kind of starting our guest slots here on the Powder Blue Report. But Ash, before we get out of here, tell us where we can find you on Twitter, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, my Twitter handle is Tilza at Tilza999s.
Fantastic. And then mine is at Wakefield90, and we are the Powder Blue Report at Powder B Report. But yeah, thanks for sticking with us for this one. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time when we've got a bunch of guests and we're going to be slagging everyone off in the AFC West. We'll see you then.